Welcome to the third webinar in our elementary writing series, Just Right. This webinar is designed to give a little more in-depth look at different types of writing required for elementary students, the appropriate tasks per level, and the writing process. As we begin to explore the types of writing for elementary students, it's imperative to keep in mind the writing process and what you have learned about pre-writing. This webinar will also show you some of the ways the graphic organizers in the last webinar can be used specifically for the types of writing presented today. The three types of writing standards in elementary deal with argument or opinion, informative or explanatory, more commonly referred to as expository, and narrative writing. According to the chart on the slide, the three types of writing are pretty equally distributed for elementary. It's important to see the transition of writing types from elementary, middle, and high school. Again, relevant, rigorous, and realistic writing tasks keep students engaged and leads to skill improvement. So now let's take a deeper dive into these three types of writing. Opinion writing sets out to prove a point, to convince a targeted audience of the viewpoint on a particular issue. Opinion writing presents ideas that follow in logical progressions with evidence to support the point. In elementary grades, argument writing is opinion writing. The most common forms of opinion text include book and movie reviews, essays, editorials, letters to the editor, opinion articles, feature articles, interviews, and speeches. The best way to teach opinion writing is to have students listen to or read examples of them. Together, listen and look for words, phrases, and techniques that help the writer persuade the listener. A simple graphic organizer, such as this one called the Oreo Graphic Organizer, can help students gather and organize their reasons and evidence to support an opinion or argument. Graphic organizers are a benefit to students in the beginning. However, as writers mature and become confident in their writing, they should internalize the patterns of organization that are most appropriate for their task or purpose. Equipping elementary students with tools such as graphic organizers is one way to help build support for their writing process. Vocabulary and word choice are also ways to help students. Here's an example of a focus lesson as referenced in our first webinar. You should go over the language of opinion writing and how certain words like fun and pretty are opinion clues, because while they may be true for some people, they are not true for everyone. Discuss how other words called transitions are signals to your readers as to where you are in your writing, the beginning, the middle, or the end. After the initial vocabulary is introduced, challenge students to look for examples of these types of words in their everyday reading. Ask students to use sticky notes to add opinion or transition words they found to an anchor chart like this one posted on a classroom wall. It's helpful for students to have anchor charts to refer to as they write. Using the language of opinion writing makes it more powerful. Let's turn our attention to information or explanatory writing, often referred to as expository writing. Nonfiction writing is all around us in newspapers, magazines, directions, street signs, recipes, letters, maps, menus. To be successful in school and in our out-of-school lives, we need to learn about nonfiction types of writing so we can read and write them with confidence. It's important to note that informational texts make up the majority of text written and read by adults, yet students aren't often taught explicit strategies for reading or writing these types of text. The intention of informational writing is to explain, describe, or inform. It does not present an argument. Writers should consider all aspects of an issue without taking a side or setting out to prove a point. Common forms of informational text include short reports, feature articles, nonfiction picture books, interviews, how-to books, recipes, book reviews or movie reviews, science reports, newspaper articles, biographies or autobiographies, and even memoirs. Informational texts serve to increase the reader's knowledge, to help the reader better understand a procedure or process, or to increase the reader's comprehension of a concept. Research and data gathering need to be at the very center of informational writing. Informational text offers the potential for increased engagement of students. Nonfiction text add another dimension of reading material tied to the personal interest of students. This can be especially appealing for students whose life experiences are not like the lives of fictional characters portrayed in traditional literature. Informational text provides opportunities to extend the range of topics students write about in the classroom. Informational text has many unique features. These features are designed to support readers in navigating through resources and to provide reader-friendly access to content. When readers know these nonfiction features appear in informational passages, they can approach their topics with added confidence and purpose. To build confidence using text features, nonfiction writers need first to notice these features in mentor books, read-alouds, and books used for independent reading. Students need to carefully note which features occur most often, what these features tell the reader, and which features help them most as a reader, and then consciously use these features in their own writing. Text features help identify the big ideas and topics in student writing. Titles and headlines, subheading and bold words, captions and labels, arrows and bullet text boxes, table of contents, glossaries and indexes, all of these features support the information the writer presents in the text. To communicate information graphically, writers can use photographs or illustrations, charts, graphs, and tables, and even flowcharts. These text features not only help readers understand text, but they add visual appeal. So now let's move our thoughts to narrative writing, that third type of writing. Narrative writing must tell a story. Generally, when writing a narrative, paragraphs usually relate events in the order in which they occurred. Types of narrative text include story summaries, timelines of major events in a person's life, comic strips, diaries and journals, story dialogue, oral storytelling, something that tells a story about a picture, retelling a story, or even creating a play on biographies or autobiographies. The topic sentence should identify the situation or event and prepare the reader for a story. An effective narrative is more than just a chronicle run-through of the things that happen to you in a typical day. It should contain some element of drama and tension. Common techniques relevant to style or the language chosen to tell a story include metaphors, similes, personification, imagery, hyperbole, and alliteration. Common techniques relevant to plot, which is the sequence of events that make up a narrative, include backstory, flashback, flash forward, and foreshadowing. Sensory details are used as a means of getting the reader more involved in the actual story. The components of narrative writing are character, setting, action, problem, and solution. The main character of a narrative should be someone readers have something in common with or at least care about. Writers should show at least one or two things about how a character looks or moves or speaks. Plot or action is most often a conflict or struggle that the main character goes through. The basic steps of a plot are the problem arises, things go right or things go wrong, and then there's a final victory or a defeat. A simple way to teach students the components of narrative writing is to read to them the nursery rhyme Little Miss Muffet. This rhyme has all of the components that students need to help them identify each element in a story. The character is Miss Muffet. The setting is on a tuffet. The action is eating curds and whey. And the problem is along came a spider. Finally, the solution is it frightened Miss Muffet away. Have students keep a copy of this nursery rhyme in their notebooks or have them memorize it so they can use it as a reference to check their own narratives. Once students know what they want to write about, they often struggle with how to get started. Having a structure to rely on can provide students with methods for developing their ideas. It's necessary to determine the method of development that is most effective for your purpose and audience. Some general methods of development are cause and effect, classification and division, compare and contrast, definition, description, exemplification, process, and anecdotes. If the writing lends itself to cause and effect, then the writer knows that the body of the writing will be composed of the details of why something happens. In writing, using cause and effect as the method of development, the writer must first distinguish between the cause and the effect. To determine causes, they should ask, why did this happen? To identify effects, they should ask, what happened because of this? However, most situations are more complicated. The following is an example of a chain reaction that may be a little more difficult to see the cause and the effect. Thinking about a test, forgot my lunch, hungry all day, couldn't focus on my work, failed the test. You can see that might be a little difficult to see the cause and the effect. To determine the effectiveness of a cause and effect writing, students should ask the following questions. What are the causes? What are the effects? Which should be emphasized? Are there single or multiple causes? Single or multiple effects? Is a chain reaction involved? 4 other methods of development besides cause and effect are classification and division, comparison and contrast, definition, and exemplification. Classification, like division, breaks a topic into subtopics with a difference. Instead of simply dividing a topic into groups, a classification essay rates or ranks the groups according to specific criteria. Comparison and contrast is one of the most familiar structures for writing. In this, students take 2 or more topics and describe how they are different and also how they are the same. Definition explains what something is in comparison to other members of its class, along with its limitations. And exemplification provides typical examples of something. Some examples use concrete examples to develop an idea. Some examples give an explanation to illustrate a concept. And other examples use a story or anecdote to make a point. Other writing may be developed by describing the topic in specific detail. Description is a method of development that is found in most effective text. The first step to vividly describing a place, person, or thing is to imagine it in your mind's eye. Or if it actually exists, you may refer to it in a photograph or just go look at it. The next step is to carefully select the right words to convey it. If the words that come to mind don't seem adequate, look in a dictionary, ask around, or do some research if necessary. But be sure to keep searching until you have the closest match possible between experience and language. You don't want to describe everything in detail all the time, as this can bore your reader. On the other hand, writing with insufficient detail will deprive the writing its impact. There is some overlap between methods of development, which we just talked about, and patterns of organization. In most cases, the method of development will determine the organizational pattern. Chronological order is useful when writing narratives. Most stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Even if the story is told in flashbacks, the event itself occurred in a chronological order. In sequential order, the writer must include every step and present the steps in the correct order. Spatial order generally comes with a set of transitive words and phrases that helps writers distinguish between parts of a paragraph. These words might include above, alongside, behind, beneath, on top of, to the left or right, under, up. The advantages or disadvantage pattern is organized by pros and cons. It's similar to comparison and contrast, that this pattern can follow a block-by-block arrangement or a point-by-point. And finally, a problem-solution pattern divides the writing into 2 main sections, one that describes a problem and one that describes a solution. This pattern is typically used in opinion and persuasive writing. You can develop writing using compare and contrast, and also use compare and contrast patterns to organize your writing. There are 2 ways comparison and contrast writing can be organized. Using the block approach, the writing is organized by discussing one subject point by point in complete detail before moving on to the next subject. The writer should select points by which both subjects can be examined. The number of body paragraphs will be determined by the number of points being made. The point-by-point approach is most effective when used to compare 2 articles or stories. The body in this writing is organized by discussing one point at a time and how it applies to each subject before moving on to the next point. The cause and effect pattern is used to show causal relationships between events. Cause and effect structures organize more sophisticated writing as students become stronger in showing the relationship between events. Young children also can begin to extend opinion essays by giving reasons to support their opinion using the word because. Signal words for cause and effect structures also include then, as a result, and therefore. There are three main ways to organize with a cause and effect pattern. The first begins with one event and examines the multiple causes. The second strategy looks at the multiple effects of one action or cause. And the third strategy for cause and effect organization is a chain of causes and effects, which begins with one event and follows the chain reaction to the end result. Keep in mind a writer's style is what makes the writing unique. Style is the way writing fits the specific context, purpose, or audience. Word choice, sentence fluency, and the writer's voice all contribute to the style of a piece of writing. Voice is the distinctive identity a writer reveals. Voice comes through in the writer's particular writing style. Style is the result of the decisions a writer makes, such as word choice, use of figurative language, and sentence structure. Style is established by word choice, sentence fluency, and voice. Good writers are concise and precise, removing unnecessary words and choosing the exact word to convey meaning. Precise words, active verbs, concrete nouns, specific adjectives help the reader visualize the writing. Good writers let their nouns and verbs do the work. Good writers also choose words that contribute to the flow of a sentence. Sentence fluency is the flow and rhythm of phrases and sentences. Good writers will use a variety of sentences with different lengths and rhythms to achieve different effects. They also use parallel structures within sentences and paragraphs to reflect parallel ideas. Good writers also arrange their ideas within a sentence for greatest effect. Keep in mind, voice is difficult to measure, so it's often left out of scoring formulas for writing tests. Yet voice is an essential element of style that reveals the writer's personality. Good writers establish and maintain a style appropriate to purpose. They demonstrate a strong sense of audience and exhibit an original point of view. Often students are given writing assignments, and these tasks can range from the most informal journal entries to more formal essays and research papers. Each different task again requires that the writer determine purpose, form, type of development, pattern of organization, and style. Whatever the task, clarify the main reasons for writing. While you will often have more than one purpose in writing, you will also find that there is a primary purpose behind each task. The audience always depends on your purpose for writing. Students should ask themselves, for whom am I writing? Know their reader. This will allow them to adapt their writing to their audience, which makes their writing relevant. The most effective writing takes into account the nature of the audience that the writer is addressing. When they are deciding on the audience, before they even begin writing, they should try to think of specific characteristics. They can use the following questions to help identify their audience and what they can do to address their wants and needs. Question 1, who is my audience? Question 2, what is most important to my audience? Number 3, what do you have to say that might surprise your audience? And 4, what impression do I want to make in my writing? Writing time occupies the largest portion of the writing workshop. Most important, students will be working on self-selected writing during the workshop, although sometimes they will work on guided or assigned writing tasks. At some point in the workshop, students should be expected to try out what they've learned in a day's focus lesson. Of course, writing is not exclusively about putting pen to paper. During this time, a student may write for a while, do some research, confer with a writing partner, or read a piece of writing aloud to himself or another student. Writing workshop immerses students in all of the language arts: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Through conversations before, during, and after writing, students clarify their own thinking. They rehearse, they revise their writing, and they collect ideas from others, including the teacher. One of the greatest benefits of the writing workshop structure is the development of independent learning habits. This webinar provided a lot of information that applies to not just students, but how you, the teacher, can help students prepare for specific types of writing. Our next webinar will deal with editing, revising, and feedback. Some food for thought as you reflect on this and the previous webinars. Are you seeing how the pieces of the writing process are recursive and reciprocal? Keep watching and you'll see even more how the pieces come together to help students become better writers and just write.